to look at the Nasanti Sutta. That is, there are not discourse. Nasanti means there are not, or there are no, and then the sentence follows. This is the first words of the sutta, or the first keywords of the sutta. This is from S1.34, S134, chapter 1, sutta number 34. And this translation is found in Sutta Discovery, SD 42.6. Now, if we have read the suttas or done some Pali chanting, we would know that one of the virtues or qualities, one of the 9 qualities or virtues of the Buddha is that of Sattva Deva Manusanang, teacher of gods and humans, teachers of, in other words, teacher of the heaven and earth. The Buddha doesn't just teach human beings, he also teaches the divine beings, all kinds of divine beings. So this is quite an amazing quality of the Buddha, if you like. In fact, it's not just humans and animals, humans and devas, but also animals. We find stories where animals listen to the Buddha's teachings. Of course, animals cannot really understand completely what humans are talking unless they are conditioned and they're just responding to sounds. And so what they respond to is the peacefulness, the sense of the loving kindness of the Buddha. And if their minds are peaceful and they die in that kind of situation, then they're reborn in the heavens. And once they're reborn in the heavens, in other words, they evolve a bit more highly. Their minds are more clear, and they're able to understand human language or understand language. And there are many such stories where these beings, these animals who died while listening to the Buddha's voice or Buddha's teaching, they are reborn as devas and they come back and then they praise the Buddha, thank the Buddha, and even sing their own verses. So we have, for example, in the Vimana Gatha, we have the story of how a frog, listening to the Buddha, was killed evidently by a farmer, standing there listening to the Buddha also. And this frog was reborn as a frog deva, right? We have heard of stories of the frog prince. So here's a frog deva, a frog deity, if you like. Of course, it doesn't look like a frog. When it's reborn, it becomes a very beautiful looking divine being, and he's very happy and comes down again. And all this brightness, and he bows to the Buddha and thanks the Buddha for the teaching, right? So in this sutta too, we see devas, a couple of devas talking to the Buddha, and the Buddha responding to them. And what's interesting is we have another monk sitting nearby, also responding to the Buddha's teaching. Right, so this is the background to this sutta. Now this sutta is recorded in the Samyutta Nikaya, the collection of connected teachings, S1.34. S1 means the very first chapter, okay, which are all verses. They're called Sagata Vakka, all verses, and these are a collection of well-known popular verses. Some of them are not exactly Buddhist, but they were incorporated into the Buddhist texts because the devas, the common people would come and just tell the Buddha some of these beautiful verses, and the Buddha would respond. This is a very interesting way of Buddhicizing popular teachings, if you like. It's like someone comes along from a new country where Buddhism has just arrived, and they tell their stories, and then as Buddhist teachers we say, oh, that's nice, we can see the story in the Buddhist way. So the ability to see the Dharma everywhere, right, to see things around you and see Dharma in them, it's a very wonderful training that we can have. Even when listening to other religions, you find they all have something good to say, especially when you see all and hear all these teachings in terms of the Dharma. Maybe their language is limited or kind of held down by their dogmas and various other limitations. But if we kind of try to see a bit beyond what they're trying to say, you find that in the Dharma there is much more to be said about goodness, peace of mind, and spiritual liberation. And if you have been following the reflections that I've been writing every week for the last 7 years or so, you find that some of these reflections are based, for example, on movies, which popular movies, especially those of literature, and also on popular television series, especially those of science fiction like Star Wars or this Stargate, Star Trek, and so on. Because some of these stories, they make use of Buddhist themes or Buddhist-related themes, and people can relate to these stories. These movies and TV series are popular because people can relate to them. What does it mean to be able to relate to these kind of stories? It means people find that it's as if they are playing that role. They've gone through that experience, or they want to have that kind of experience. And of course, if you see this as something either very negative or very positive, the Dharma has something to say about this. If it is very negative, it's to be avoided. If it is very positive, it's to be practiced. So we also can, for example, look at literature. Well, since I'm speaking in English, we can speak of English literature. You find there are lots of wonderful moments in the English literature which are related to some important aspects of our lives, and that's where the Dharma can be used. So you find, for example, in the reflections that there are those based on Moby Dick, which is one of the greatest works of American literature. Another one on Middlemarch, which is probably the greatest work in English, English of Europe. And then recently I completed one more reflection on The Great Gatsby, which talks a lot about the nature of a modern society where money is all important and so on. So we find many of this kind of reflection true to our lives. So the Dharma has something to say about this, how to, for example, recognize the weaknesses, the dangers of such a situation, and how to get out of them to be happy. So in other words, the Dharma is able to relate to whatever is happening in our lives around us, and to tell us to look beyond these pointers, if you like, to see the bigger picture. Right? So in that way, the Dharma, in other words, fit very nicely into our daily lives. So here we see the Devas telling the Buddha something that they believe in. Okay? So let's look at the sutta. What did the Devas tell the Buddha? The translation is on page 27. There are not discourses. Okay? S134. At one time, the Blessed One was staying in Anathapindika's spa in Jeta's Grove outside Savatthi. Now, when it was late at night, some devas of the Satulapa host, of exceeding beauty, lighting up the whole of Jeta's Grove, approached the Blessed One. It is a very common scenario, especially in Jetavana. The devas would come late at night. Now notice here that the time is not exact, just as late at night. But from the commentary traditions, we have a good idea when this time, what this time refers to. The day in the Buddha's time is divided into two parts: daytime, nighttime. The daytime, the only what we will call today 2 hours. There is the morning hour, forenoon, in other words from daybreak, sunrise, dawn until noon, that is called the forenoon. And then from the forenoon until sunset is called the afternoon. Only these two times. So kind of people are more relaxed with time. They do not have a watch and clocks like what we have today. They may have a kind of more detailed measurement of time, but we're not told about this in the suttas. However, in the night, there are 3 watches, 3 hours if you like. There is the first watch, middle watch, last watch. And they're kind of like 4 hours each, 12 hours in the night, so roughly 4 hours each. Of course, in the Buddha's time, they wouldn't think of 4 hours. They just say first watch. So the first watch would be from sundown or sunset to, say, around 10. And then 10 to 2. So you have another 4 hours, and then 2 to 6. So 6 o'clock is around sunrise. Maybe they're not that exact, it's probably measure time from sunset. And then kind of they look at the stars maybe. So there you have 3 kind of watches in the night. And they are fittingly called watches because probably that's the time when the guards guarding the fortresses or the king's walls, they change shift. So each guard will watch the fortress for 4 hours. Because more than that, they probably will be falling asleep and won't be very safe. So when the sutta says late at night, it usually refers to the middle watch, between 10 to 2, and that's the time it is said the devas will come to see the Buddha. For one reason is it is a very quiet time, and we're talking about ancient India in the Buddha's time, 2,500 years ago. Very quiet, very peaceful. There are no handphones, no airplanes, no TV, and so on. So it's really beautiful, really peaceful. And there are no lights like we have today. So it's also very dark. So when these devas appeared, they were radiant and bright, and they would light up the whole place, so we are told. And these devas, they're from a particular group called the Satulapa host. Right? So they're not really a whole kind of a big habit, it's just a group of them. Satulapa, Satta means good, goodness, and Ulapa is something like to say out. So these devas, they have the habit of saying something good, or the habit of saying that's good. So in other words, they're happy in that sense. Maybe in their previous life, they were humans who have this wonderful quality of being positive and kind and so on. And so they appear before the Buddha. Having approached the Blessed One, they saluted him and stood at one side. It was interesting, the devas, they will usually stand at one side. Well, I think one reason is because they're not of our physical form. So they like have to get into a kind of they have to consciously materialize themselves. So for that reason, one of the reasons they tend to rather stand at one side before the Buddha, and then kind of tell the Buddha whatever they want to tell. There are others who are more respectful, like Brahma, who would kneel on one knee, like a prince. And princes also would do that. And later on, in the Buddhist art of later times, in the Mahayana times, they would depict the Bodhisattvas in this manner too. So anyway, these devas came and they stand near the Buddha. Standing thus at one side, one of the devas uttered this verse before the Buddha. So the first deva said, Na santi kama manu jesu nicha. There you are, see, Na santi starts the verse. So this is the name of the sutta. Na santi manu jesu nicha. There are no lasting sense pleasures amongst humans. Santida kamaniyani yesu baddo. here bound in the pleasurable, Yesu pamatto apuna gamanang, that heedless one is unable to move on again. Anaganta puriso machu deya di, that person returns not from death's realm. Okay, this is a opinion of Devas, of course. This is not Buddha word. So we have to be very careful when we look at the suttas. Not everything in the suttas are Deva word. A Buddha word. This is Deva word, if you like. It's a Deva's opinion, and the Buddha will kind of correct it or refine it. Now let me read the English translation again. There are no lasting sense pleasures amongst humans. Here, bound in the pleasurable, the heedless one is unable to move on again. That person returns not from death's realm. Right? Well, the first part of the verse is right, that sensual pleasures are impermanent. But to say that, what does it mean to say that the heedless one is unable to move on again? Does it mean cannot be reborn? And then the last line says, returns not from death's realm. Machudeya. Here, Machudeya can also translate as the power of death. They return not from the power of death. Here, meaning that death will always, they will always be dying. They're born and die, born and die. So in that sense, they are right. This is a, if you like, you might say it's a reflection on impermanence by the Devas. Then another Deva says, Chandajang agam chandajang dukhan, Chanda vinaya aga vinayo, aga vinaya dukkha vinayo ti. Okay, that's a play on the word vinaya here, meaning to draw away or remove. Misery is born of lust. Suffering is born of lust. When lust is rid of, misery is rid of. When misery is rid of, suffering is rid of. And so it's almost like a reflection on dependent arising. Okay. One thing leads to another. So these Devas must have been listening to the Buddha, right? Whenever the Buddha teaches, Devas to listen too. Or maybe these Devas have learned some Dharma or some wise teachings in their past lives as humans. So they've come to rejoice with the Buddha. So we do see here some Devas do have this kind of inclination that they do like to meet the Buddha because they feel peaceful. But most of the Devas would like to be very playful, enjoying their happy life. So anyway, here you have these Devas saying these two beautiful verses. Then the Buddha responds. The Buddha says, now we have Buddha word, okay? Verse 6. Na te kamayani chitrani loke sankappa rago purisasa kamo titanti chitrani tateva loke atetta dhira vinayanti chandam. Okay, so now this verse is very famous in fact. This verse is found in many suttas. Here you see there are 4 lines. But in the Nibbedika Sutta A6.63, there are 5 lines. You find line, let me see. Here in the 5-line version, line A, line B is shifted around. Then line A is repeated. Right? So you find that in others have 2 versions. One is the one with 5 lines and the other is 4 lines. The one with the 5 lines in the Nibbedika Paraya Sutta is also quoted in the Kathavatu, page 370. Apparently the better known one is this 4 lines. Okay? Now, there's nothing wrong with the 5-line version because some scholars think that in the case of the 5-line version, the first line belongs to the prose version of the sutta. There should only be 4 lines. That may not be the case because just because you find the 4 lines in one sutta doesn't mean all the other appearance sutta have 4 lines. If you look at the context carefully, we will have a better idea what is meant there. In fact, it's a matter of emphasis. You find in the case of the Nipatike Sutta, the emphasis is more on the nature of the world, right? So the first line is repeated, or rather, in the case of the Nipatike Sutta, it is the third line. And whereas here, the stress is on personal effort. Okay? So it depends on the emphasis. In other words, if you really look at the sutta and the context and you just spend a quiet moment and then you reflect on it, especially if you do meditation, you find that the meanings will fall in very nicely. You don't have to think too much about it. Just let the ideas kind of join together in the spirit of the Buddha's teaching. Alright, so here the Buddha says, there are no sensuality in what are beautiful in the world. Okay? Now, this word beautiful, chitrani, it doesn't exactly mean beautiful in the normal sense of the word. Here, beautiful in the sense of diverse, variegated. There's so many things in this world that is fun, so to speak. In fact, there's so many things that we don't know what we want, or we don't know when to stop wanting. Chitra. Okay? Chitra means complex, beautiful. So it's got all these different meanings. And not just beautiful, also means there's so many things to choose from. The thought of passion is a person's sensuality. Now, the line A, line B are connected. You have to reflect on them together. Look at the lines again. There are no sensuality in what is beautiful in the world. There are beautiful things in the world. The world is neutral. Don't blame the world. Okay? Beautiful sunset, or maybe good-looking people, attractive people, nice things, beautiful paintings, right? They are beautiful, yes, but they do not have that innate quality of enticing us. Take a simple example. I mean, we say, oh, the Mona Lisa is the most beautiful painting in the world. But if you got someone who's not really interested in painting, you look at it and say, oh, it's just a picture of a woman, so what's the big deal, for example? And you say, oh, this guy's Philistine, you say. But all these are opinions, subjective evaluations. Okay? Of course, there are people who do love art, yes, even music. And for example, we say classical music is great music. I love classical music. But there are those who don't. Maybe they like rock music or metal music. So you find different people attracted to different kinds of sight, sound, smell, taste, touches, and so on. So in other words, the sounds in themselves, the sound, sight, sounds, and so on in themselves, have no enticing, attractive power. It is how we condition ourselves that we like those things. The thought of passion is a person's sexuality. It's how we think, how we react, how we respond to those external stimuli, if you like, those external phenomena, if you like. For example, there's a story of driftwood, this piece of wood which is a tree trunk has fallen into the sea, and seawater has washed it in salty water, and you're left with this dry tree trunk on the coast, on the beach. And then, let's say a Buddhist monk comes along, looks at the tree, and he tells his pupils, says, look, anicca, impermanent, right? Look at this tree, look at this trunk, it was once a tree, and now you see it's all white, bleached, dry. And then comes an artist, or a poet, if you like, looks at this tree and says, oh, what a beautiful piece of natural art. You might write a poem about it, or this artist might paint something about it, right? And then a carpenter comes along. The carpenter looks at the wood and says, oh, this wonderful seasoned wood. This is great. I can make things with this wood. And here comes along a woodcutter or a poor man says, well, wow, look at this wood. I can use this as firewood, right? So you find different people, depending on their inclination, they see what's out there according to their own predisposition. So the thought of passion is a person's sexuality. How you respond to liking or disliking something is your own mind. Okay, in the next line, I have translated Chitra as alluringly diverse. The alluringly diverse in the world remain just as they are. Or if you like, you can say the beautiful in the world remain just as they are. So here the wise remove desire for them. So in other words, we don't blame women for having a pretty face or nice body, right? In a man-dominated society, they say, oh, it's the women, who are causing us to be enticed. Or you have men with nice muscles and body, and the women, and they say, well, women like these things. Well, not all women like these things. So it's more, as the Sutta says, these are personal perceptions. It's how we look at things. The passion, the desire is in the mind, not in the body. So this is a beautiful verse. In other words, you're not blaming anyone here. They're saying if anything to blame is the way we think. The second verse of the Buddha, Kodang jahe vipajaheya manang Sangyojanang sabbang atikameya Tang nama rupasming asajamanang Akinchanang nanupatanti dukkha. One should abandon anger, let go of conceit. One should cross over all mental fetters. Who cling not to name and form, having nothing, falls not into suffering. Okay. Who is the Buddha talking about here? You can see the word conceit, you can see the word having nothing. You can guess this verse refers to an arahat. An arahat, the full-fledged saint, just like the Buddha. On the other hand, we can still practice these teachings on a simple level. For example, the Buddha says, one should abandon anger. One should let go of conceit. Why does the Buddha mention anger? Because in the first verse, the Buddha mentions lust, attraction to something beautiful. So anger is the opposite of that. Dislike. Anger is an aspect of disliking. So we should not get upset if we are not able to get something, or we are thrown with something which we don't like. Basically, to let go of anger, so that we are at peace with ourselves, we don't upset people, and we go around happily. Conceit is a very difficult defilement to get rid of. Only the arahats get rid of conceit. Even the saints, they have a bit of conceit. The strimana, one-strimana, non-strimana, a slight conceit. For example, when we look at people who don't meditate, who don't study sutta, say, oh, you look at these people, don't they realize, because they don't love the Dhamma, they're suffering. So they feel that they're better than, instead of standard, they're better than all these people who are suffering. And rightly so. But that's, of course, is an opinion, not very serious in terms of what we call defilement, but it's just a passing thought. One should cross over all mental fetters. Mental fetters are those things that prevent us from letting go of the world to attain spiritual liberation. Who cling not to name and form. Name and form is the way the world works, right? You see things, and names are given to it, and names are useful, yes, but especially in religion, you find certain things are given names, and those names sound so big, so real, and a whole religion is built on these words. And if you are not circumspect, you start thinking that all these things are real. Actually, they're just play on words. Words built on words. It's a big castle of words, if you like. And there's nothing there. So the Buddha says, I use words, I use language, but I'm not attached to them. Someone comes along and complains to a monk, says, oh, someone says, how many feelings are there? Someone says 2, and one says 3. Okay? The Buddha says it doesn't matter. You can use any number, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, even 108. It depends on how you look at feelings, or what is it you want to talk about. So you have a very beautiful way here, a very practical way of discussing things, because you're using ideas here. In other words, whatever terms you use, define them. And from there, you're able to communicate and understand each other. Right? So, in a sense, words don't mean anything. They only have the meanings that we put onto those things. Just like that episode of Humpty Dumpty in Alice in Wonderland, I use words the way I want them to mean, for example. So, but we got to know what this person mean by those words. And if we have this kind of skill, it's easier to get along with people. And for example, such skills are very useful, very important for a counselor. A counselor listens to someone in trouble, saying all kinds of things. This person might say, I'm very angry with this person, but the reality is this person actually loves the other person. Let's say, for example, a parent may say, oh, I'm very angry with my child. But he doesn't hate the child. I mean, he's just concerned with the child. He loves the child. Right? So we have to see beyond words, beyond just purely concepts. What does it mean? Okay? Having nothing falls not into suffering. Having nothing, akintana. So here, in other words, the true renunciant owns nothing except basic things like the robe, the bowl, and so on. But here, having nothing means no more new karma. Because karma is the real things that we own. We truly own our karma follows us wherever we go. So here is where having nothing means we have let go of the world, we're no more carried away, overwhelmed by the 5 senses, with the mind as the 6th. We are at peace with ourselves, we are happy for what we are. So, when we have let go of all the things of the world, even views, then we do not fall into suffering. The next verse, Pasi Sankang Nacha Mana Achaka Achechi Tanhang Ida Nama Rupe Tan China Gantang Anigan Nirasam Pariye Samana Na Jagamung. Abandon is reckoning, overcome is conceit. Cut off here is craving for name and form. Whose knot is cut, untroubled, longing-free, seeking him, they find him not. Right? So again here the Buddha is talking about the Arahant. Abandon is reckoning. In other words, you cannot pin your finger, you cannot put on your finger on Arahant. Who is he exactly? Well, first of all, you're not able to recognize him if you're not an Arahant yourself. You may think that someone is an Arahant, but those are appearances. Of course, we could be right, but it's very difficult to be an Arahant. We like to say so-and-so is an Arahant, right? But we are not Arahant, so how can we say someone else is an Arahant? And so we are just projecting our own opinions and wishful thinking, or even pride, right? We might feel very proud, say, oh, my teacher is an Arahant, or my teacher is a perfect teacher, and so on. You cannot reckon someone who's awakened. There's no way of measuring someone who's awakened. Because, and this awakened person also does not measure up. The Arahant, he has no more conceit. Cut off here is craving for name and form. So it doesn't bother about titles and names and so on. You find nowadays it's very common for monks monks who can't meditate or who do not keep the Vinaya rules to become scholars and use titles, Venerable Doctor and so on, and they effectively become career monks. So here it's just the opposite. Here the sutta says they have no more craving for name and form, not for things, not for titles. They have renounced the world. Whose knot is cut. Here the knot is something that ties us. Here of course craving, all those things that get us tied up to this world and to suffering, all that has been cut off. So he is untroubled, he has no more longing, he is free. The Buddha says, seeking him, they find him not. You won't be able to know this person if you meet him, unless you're one. Now the Buddha may have stopped there for a while, paused for a while, because he said something very deep. Now there's someone sitting there, Mogaraja, and Mogaraja also is an Arahat. He's one of the 16 young men or 16 youths. The word youth simply means Brahmin student. One of them is very old actually. And so he is there listening. And Mogaraja, he's very good in investigating the Dharma. In fact, he became an Arahat through investigation. And he also has what's called Anusandhi Kusala. He is skillful in noticing connections or seeing connections in the suttas. So here, he's not exactly correcting the Buddha. He just probably noticed the Buddha has stopped speaking, and the Buddha says, "Oh, you will not find this Arahat." So he's afraid that Devas might misunderstand that you'll never see any Arahats, or that there's no way you can meet an Arahat. So he's just saying this like by way of commentary for the benefit of the Devas. You find Ananda also playing this role, trying to help the interlocutor or the audience. Like for example, when someone, say a wanderer A comes along, tells the Buddha something, asks the Buddha a wrong question, the Buddha remains silent, If the Buddha is silent, of course, you have nothing more after that, I mean, it's just total silence, so it won't help much for us to study as a sutta. So Ananda is there as a kind of a commentator, as a middleman for our benefit. So Ananda will say, for example, Ananda may explain to this, the interlocutor, he says, oh, well, the Buddha is silent because you asked a wrong question. You should ask the question like this. And then after that, the sutta progresses. Right? So you have this very interesting way of storytelling, so that the Dharma is presented to us in different ways. So here Mogaraja plays the role. And he says, Deva manusa idawa urangwa sagesua sabba nives sane suti tanchehi na dakung tatawi mutang ichayasma Mogaraja. This is in brackets, in other words, the council fathers of the one added this line saying, spoken by Mogaraja. Deva manusa ida wa hurangwa narut tamang patacharang narana yetang namasanti pasangsiya te ti. Devas of humans here or beyond, in the heavens or in any abode, they see him not because he is free. Right, so here you can see Mogaraja commenting on what the Buddha has said, rather expanding on the Buddha has said. This is what it means, it's trying to say. You don't see him because he's free, he's liberated, okay? Vimutta. Then there's a line there added by the council elders, said the Venerable Mogaraja. And then the verse continues, gods and humans here or beyond, who the highest of men, faring for man's good, honor, are themselves to be praised. Right? So here it says, those who honor the highest of men, right? The Buddha, they should be praised. Right? So he's showing his respect to the Buddha. He says, this person you can't find is actually the Buddha himself. And it is to the Buddha that you should show great honor. But the Buddha, of course, has the last word. So the Buddha basically is saying, oh, I mean, it's not just me, you should honor all those who are awakened, the arahats. Pasansya tepi bhavanti bhikkhu mogarajati bhagavan. Ye tan namasanti tata vimuttan anyaya dhammang vichikiccang pahaya sangatiga tepi bhavanti bhikkhuti. Those monks too should be praised. Mogaraja, said the Blessed One. So you have Mogaraja, said the Blessed One in brackets. See, this has been inserted by the council elders to tell us who's talking. And the Buddha is addressing Mogaraja. Those monks too should be praised who honor them, thus liberated, having abandoned doubt through knowing Dharma. These monks become those who have crossed over bonds. Right, so the Buddha says you should not just praise me, you should also praise those monks, of course nuns also, and a few laymen who have become arahats. In other words, they really practice and they're free from all bonds, fully liberated. They too should be given the honor, they should be respected. So here again you see the Buddha not drawing attention to him, not say you must believe in me, worship me, and so on, right? He says, he's talking about a type of person, a liberated person, the arahat. The other ones who are praiseworthy. The other ones, the other goal that you and I should aim for. If not reaching them, at least near them as streamliness. Okay? So the sutta ends there. So now let us close with a short reflection. Whenever we reflect on the suttas, it is like as if we go back in time, or we go into a new dimension where the Buddha is still teaching, and we are listening to the Dharma. So here in this sutta, we have this opportunity to look at the Buddha's teaching again, to see how he presented this wonderful Dharma for the benefit of devas as well as humans. And we see also how the Arahat monks are able to make such teachings clearer for us. Reflecting in this way is very good karma. By the power of such karma, may we be well and happy in this life itself, here and now. May we have the wisdom and patience to understand the Dharma just as we read them. And also, by the power of all these good deeds, this good karma and many other good deeds we have done, we attain spiritual liberation, namely stream winning in this life itself. In this moment of peace, let us send out our loving kindness to all those who have taught us the Dharma and benefited us in some way. And also our loved ones, our family and friends, may they be well and happy. And also those whom the Dharma have not touched, that they may realize the Dharma and be awakened beings too. May all beings be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.